Welcome to the extended version of this lesson on the final plan. We just covered what the final plan is, its 4 common elements, and why the protag's allies are often front and center in this phase. Now, let's explore why this phase is so important, a secret to perfectly set up your story climax, and then look at the final plan in action with an in-depth example of 1990's Home Alone. Let's start with the why. One major reason the final plan is so crucial is because it bridges a gap. Right before this, the inner gateway had us down in the depths of rock bottom. And in the next step, the story climax, we're going to be nearing the peak of the protag's success. That is a startling jump, and we need to see the transition between these two moments. So first and foremost, the final plan helps create the upward arc that will end in the story climax. Next, the final plan builds anticipation for the story climax. Usually the story climax will be some sort of event, whether that's a wedding to interrupt or an epic final battle. But in order for this moment to feel impactful, we need to set up its scope. The final plan is like the hype man for the story climax. It energizes the audience, builds the pace, and delivers them with wide eyes into the thrilling conclusion of your story. And lastly, it sets the stage for the story climax. This is the most practical answer, since often you'll need some pieces to come together so you can have something to work with in the next moment. This is where all those common elements come in, whether those are tools, allies, or traveling to the destination. As mentioned, the allies will showcase themselves here, but make sure you showcase some of those tools as well. And if they are traveling to a destination, there's often a time crunch, like our example from Shrek. Lastly, let's talk about the allies a little more to understand exactly why they're showcased so heavily in this phase. As mentioned, the allies will usually sacrifice themselves or pave the way for the protag. One reason this is important is to give these characters their moment to shine before things become all about the protag. But more importantly, it sets up a critical element for the story climax. The story climax should showcase the protag facing the antag, and key here is the two of them alone. 90% of the time, the protag will have all of their allies stripped away and end up face to face with the antag, like in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Moana, or the Lego Movie. So not only does the final plan give the allies a chance to shine, but it gives you an opportunity to get them out of the way. This is the secret to setting the stage for the story climax, as there is no one left but the protag and the antag. And since the story climax should be all about the protag, the final plan does double duty, highlighting the allies and getting them out of the way. Now, let's see the final plan in action with our in-depth example.
Home Alone is a 1990 Christmas classic that follows Kevin, a young boy, as his family forgets to bring him on vacation and he's instead forced to defend his house from burglars. It features one of our favorite final plans, both because of how it accomplishes exactly what it needs to, while also featuring a literal final plan. Let's start with a recap. Kevin is forgotten when his family leaves for vacation, and he wakes up home alone. This starts out fun, until Kevin realizes 2 burglars are trying to rob his house. Unsure of what to do, Kevin visits a church where a neighbor helps him overcome his fears before Kevin rushes home in the inner gateway exclaiming, "This is my house, I have to defend it." You can see this is a clear recommitment to his goal. So now, in the final plan, it's time to see the protag preparing for the final showdown with the antag. Here, that's Kevin preparing to face the burglars. So of course, what better way to start than with a literal final plan, which Kevin rolls out across his table. This isn't so different from the map icon we use for the final plan symbol, as it charts the protag's course to the story climax. Home Alone does a great job of setting up all the pieces for the story climax. Here, we see Kevin setting up traps for the burglars, from toys to tar to a treehouse zipline. This is a great example of the practicality of this phase. It builds anticipation as we wait to see how all of these pieces will come together in the story climax. This is the gathering of tools we mentioned earlier, which in this case are traps instead of weapons. You can see a similar final plan in Predator. Even though there isn't a gathering of allies, traveling to a destination, or defeating sub-antags, this final plan proves that simple can be just as effective as complicated. Remember, the final plan is the build-up before the excitement of the story climax. So as long as you build anticipation, set up what needs to be set up, gather what needs to be gathered, and get to where you need to get to, you've accomplished the purpose of the final plan. And of course, at the end of Home Alone's final plan, we see Kevin grab his BB gun and head to the door, ready to take on the burglars. So yes, on top of traps, he also grabs a weapon. And he sets himself up perfectly for an unforgettable story climax.
You should now have a strong understanding of the final plan, including all of its potential components, why it needs to build anticipation, and its plain old practicality. And in the next lesson, we finally reach the point we've been heading towards since the catalyst, the story climax.